Everyone thinks they know Bruce Lee. The lightning speed, the explosive power, the philosophy that turned martial arts into a way of life. But what if the most dangerous moment of Bruce Lee's life never happened on camera, never happened in a ring, and was never meant to be shared at all? This story doesn't begin with applause or flashing lights. It begins in silence. In the early 1970s, Hollywood was obsessed with strength. Tough guys ruled the screen, and egos were often louder than talent. Behind that world stood Steve McQueen, the king of cool, a global star, a man admired by millions, and quietly a student of Bruce Lee. Few people knew how close they were. Fewer still understood the bond they shared. To Steve, Bruce wasn't just a trainer. He was a guide, a man who believed true power wasn't about dominance. It was about control. Then came a night that never made headlines. A moment when fame invited the wrong kind of attention. A moment when one wrong decision could have ended everything. Bruce didn't step in for recognition. He didn't step in to prove anything. He stepped in because walking away would have meant betrayal, not just of his student, but of his own philosophy. That single choice would follow him for the rest of his life. After that night, Bruce Lee was no longer the same man. Those closest to him noticed it immediately. He became quieter, more guarded, more selective with his words. Interviews sounded polished, but something was missing. It wasn't fear. It was awareness. Bruce understood something most people never do. Knowledge in the wrong hands doesn't empower, it destroys. And so, after ensuring Steve McQueen was safe, Bruce delivered a warning so serious that even Steve was shaken by it. Not about fighting, not about fame, but about 3 truths Bruce believed should never be shared freely. He didn't write them down. He didn't teach them publicly, and he never spoke of them again. Because Bruce Lee believed that some secrets don't test your strength. They test your character. And if you fail that test, the consequences are permanent. This is where the story truly begins. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand the world Bruce Lee and Steve McQueen were living in. Hollywood in the early 1970s was not just about movies. It was about image, reputation, and power. Behind closed doors, competition was fierce, egos were fragile, and respect was often demanded rather than earned. Being famous didn't make life safer. It made it more exposed. Steve McQueen knew this better than anyone. To the public, he was fearless, untouchable, the definition of cool. But privately, Steve was searching for something fame couldn't give him. Discipline, balance, control. That search led him to Bruce Lee. Bruce didn't train Steve to look strong. He trained him to be strong. Their sessions weren't just physical. Bruce spoke about awareness, restraint, and responsibility. He often told Steve that the real danger in life wasn't other people. It was losing control of your own reactions. Power, Bruce once said, reveals who you really are. And Steve listened. That's why what happened that night mattered so much. It wasn't a public event. There were no cameras, no audience, just a quiet moment that suddenly became tense. A misunderstanding, raised voices, a situation that could have escalated if handled the wrong way. Bruce saw it instantly. Where others might have reacted emotionally, Bruce slowed down. He assessed the energy in the room. He read body language. He recognized fear disguised as confidence, something he had studied his entire life. Bruce didn't move forward with aggression. He moved forward with presence. Sometimes that's all it takes. The tension dissolved before it turned into something irreversible. No spectacle, no chaos, just a silent shift and the realization that things could have gone very differently. Afterward, Steve was shaken, not because of what almost happened, but because of how close it came to happening without warning. That was when Bruce spoke, not as a teacher, not as a fighter, but as a man who understood consequences. He told Steve that fame creates illusions. It convinces people they are invincible until they aren't. And it attracts people who want to test limits, provoke reactions, and feed off attention. Then Bruce shared something deeply personal. He admitted that there were principles he refused to teach openly. Not because they were powerful, but because they were dangerous without maturity. He believed that some knowledge, when misunderstood, could amplify ego instead of wisdom. These are not secrets for everyone, Bruce warned. They are responsibilities. Steve realized in that moment that Bruce had just stepped beyond training. He was offering protection, not from others, but from the darker side of success itself. From that day on, their relationship changed. Steve became more reflective, more cautious, less interested in proving himself. He trusted Bruce not just with his body, but with his perspective on life. And Bruce, he carried the weight of knowing how fragile balance truly is. Because once you see how quickly control can disappear, you never look at strength the same way again. And this understanding would lead Bruce to make one final decision. A decision that shaped the warning he would never stop believing in. The moment didn't explode. There was no chaos, no dramatic confrontation, no scene anyone would ever talk about. And that was exactly what made it unforgettable. Bruce Lee understood something most people never realize until it's too late. Real danger doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, disguised as confidence, humor, or harmless tension. And by the time you recognize it, control has already slipped away. That night, Bruce felt the shift before anyone else did. It wasn't what was said, it was what wasn't. The silence between words, the stiffness in posture, the way the room seemed to tighten, as if holding its breath. Bruce had trained his mind for moments like this long before he trained his body. He didn't react. He observed. Where others might have felt challenged, Bruce felt responsibility. Not just toward Steve McQueen, but toward himself. Because Bruce believed that every situation tests your discipline more than your strength. He stepped forward calmly, not to dominate, but to stabilize. And something remarkable happened. The energy changed. Not because Bruce demanded it, but because he embodied it. People often misunderstand control. They think it's about authority or intimidation. Bruce knew better. Control, to him, was clarity. The ability to remain centered while everything around you drifts toward chaos. That clarity ended the tension before it had a chance to define the night. Afterward, Bruce didn't celebrate. He didn't speak about it. He didn't even acknowledge it. To him, the most important victories were invisible, the ones where nothing happens because you acted at the right moment. But inside, something had shifted. Bruce realized how thin the line truly was, how quickly situations could spiral, how easily ego could turn into regret, how fame magnified everything, good and bad. Later that night, away from everyone else, Bruce and Steve sat in silence. The noise of the world had faded, but the weight of the moment hadn't. Steve finally spoke. He admitted something he rarely did: uncertainty. He confessed that success had made him feel untouchable, until that night reminded him how fragile control really is. Bruce listened without interrupting. He believed that listening was more powerful than lecturing. Then Bruce said something that stayed with Steve forever. He explained that most people chase power without understanding its cost. They want influence, recognition, and respect, but they don't prepare for the responsibility that comes with it. Bruce told Steve that real mastery isn't about reacting faster than others. It's about resisting the urge to react at all. That was the turning point. Bruce made a decision in that moment, one that would shape the rest of his life. He chose restraint over recognition, wisdom over exposure, responsibility over fame. From then on, Bruce became increasingly selective about what he taught and to whom. He refused to share certain philosophies publicly, not because he feared misuse, but because he expected it. He believed that without humility, knowledge becomes a weapon against the self. This belief isolated him. People misunderstood his silence. Some assumed arrogance. Others thought he was hiding something. But Bruce wasn't protecting secrets. He was protecting people from themselves. Steve understood that. That's why he never pressured Bruce to explain further. He accepted that some lessons are earned, not given. As they parted that night, Bruce left Steve with a quiet reminder. Not everything that can be taught should be taught. Those words weren't dramatic. They weren't mysterious. They were heavy, because Bruce knew that one day, the world would want everything from him: his ideas, his methods, his philosophy. And when that day came, he would have to decide what to give and what to withhold. This was no longer just about a single moment. It was about the future, about legacy, about responsibility, about the danger of sharing truths with those unprepared to carry them. And that understanding would soon lead Bruce to articulate the warning that would define his final message. The warning about 3 secrets he believed could change a life or destroy it. Bruce Lee waited before speaking. Not minutes, days. That alone made the warning heavier than any dramatic speech ever could. Bruce believed that timing was everything. Words delivered too early were ignored. Words delivered too late became regrets. And what he was about to share with Steve McQueen was not advice. It was a boundary. When they finally spoke again, it wasn't in a gym or on a set. There were no distractions, no audience, just 2 men who understood that silence sometimes carries more truth than sound. Bruce's voice was calm, but deliberate. He told Steve that the world misunderstands strength. People chase it, admire it, and fear it, without ever asking what it costs. True power, Bruce explained, doesn't announce itself. It isolates. It attracts pressure. And if handled carelessly, it destroys the very person who holds it. Then Bruce did something unusual. He didn't explain what the 3 secrets were. He explained why they must never be shared freely. The first danger, Bruce said, was ego. When knowledge reaches someone before humility does, it becomes poison. It feeds superiority. It creates the illusion of control without the foundation of discipline. Bruce had seen talented people collapse under their own confidence, not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked restraint. The second danger was misinterpretation. Bruce warned that deep truths are easily twisted by those searching for shortcuts. People don't want understanding, they want results. And when wisdom is reduced to technique, its purpose is lost. Without context, even the most balanced ideas can become destructive. The third danger was responsibility. Bruce believed that once you possess certain knowledge, you can't unsee it. You can't walk away from its consequences. Every decision becomes heavier. Every mistake echoes louder. Most people want power without accountability, and that imbalance, Bruce said, is where damage begins. Steve listened without interrupting. He realized that Bruce wasn't guarding secrets out of fear. He was guarding people from harm, especially themselves. Bruce made one thing clear. These weren't secrets meant to make someone dangerous. They were truths meant to make someone aware. And awareness, without emotional maturity, could overwhelm the mind. That's why I don't teach everyone, Bruce told him quietly. The world often accused Bruce Lee of being closed off, of holding back, of refusing to explain everything. But Steve now understood the reason. Bruce wasn't hiding knowledge. He was filtering intention. Bruce explained that not everyone who asks is ready to receive. Some want power to impress. Some want it to dominate. Some want it to escape insecurity. Very few want it to become responsible. And only those few could be trusted. Steve felt the weight of that realization. Fame had taught him how easily people misused influence, how quickly admiration turned into entitlement. Bruce's warning wasn't just philosophical. It was practical. It applied to life, leadership, and legacy. Bruce ended the conversation with a sentence Steve would never forget. If you give someone fire before teaching them control, don't be surprised when everything burns. After that, Bruce never revisited the topic. He didn't expand on it. He didn't clarify it. He didn't soften it. The warning stood exactly as it was, incomplete by design. Because Bruce believed that the right people wouldn't need further explanation. They would feel the weight of it immediately. From that moment on, Bruce carried himself differently. His interviews became more measured. His teachings more focused on mindset than mechanics. His philosophy leaned heavily towards self-mastery rather than external skill. People admired his calm, but few recognized the discipline behind it. Steve did, and he respected Bruce for what he didn't share even more than what he did. Because the most dangerous thing Bruce Lee ever understood wasn't how to strike. It was knowing when not to reveal the truth. And that belief would soon define the final chapter of his philosophy, a chapter that forces us to ask a difficult question. Are all secrets meant to be uncovered, or are some meant to protect us from ourselves? The world never noticed the change right away. From the outside, Bruce Lee still looked the same, calm, confident, precise. Interviews praised his clarity. Fans admired his discipline. Studios saw a man who seemed perfectly in control of his destiny. But control, Bruce knew, comes at a price. After the warning, something settled inside him. Not fear, not regret, responsibility. The kind that doesn't fade when the lights turn off. The kind that follows you into quiet moments and asks questions no one else can hear. Bruce became more selective, not just with what he taught, but with who he allowed close to him. He listened more. He spoke less. And when he did speak, his words carried weight because they were measured, not reactive. Those closest to him noticed it. There was a stillness about Bruce that hadn't been there before. A pause before decisions. A carefulness in conversations. He no longer felt the need to prove anything, and that unsettled people who expected confidence to look louder. But Bruce understood something they didn't. Restraint is invisible strength. The cost of that restraint was isolation. When you stop performing for approval, fewer people recognize you. When you stop explaining yourself, misunderstandings grow. Some interpreted Bruce's silence as arrogance. Others thought he was withholding knowledge out of pride. None of them saw the burden behind it. Bruce carried the weight of knowing that his influence could shape minds, for better or worse. He understood that his words could inspire discipline or fuel ego, depending on who received them. And that awareness made every public appearance a calculation. What should I share? What should I withhold? Who is listening and why? These are not questions of fear. They were questions of responsibility. Steve McQueen sensed it. Their conversations grew quieter, deeper. Less about training, more about perspective. Steve realized that Bruce wasn't withdrawing from the world. He was protecting it from misinterpretation. Bruce once said that the greatest danger of mastery is believing you've finished learning. That belief closes the mind. It invites mistakes. And Bruce refused to let his own success blind him. The unseen cost also showed up in his work. Bruce pushed himself relentlessly, not to impress, but to refine. Every movement, every idea, every word had to align with his principles. He rejected shortcuts. He resisted trends. He refused to simplify his philosophy just to make it more marketable. That made things harder. Opportunities slowed. Expectations grew heavier. People wanted more Bruce Lee, but not everyone wanted the discipline that came with him. Still, Bruce held his ground, because giving people what they want is easy. Giving them what they need, without harming them, is not. Late at night, Bruce often reflected alone, not on fame, but on impact. He questioned whether silence was the right choice, whether withholding truths was protection or control. These doubts didn't weaken him. They refined him. He accepted that leadership is lonely, and that some burdens are meant to be carried quietly. The unseen cost was not exhaustion or pressure. It was awareness. Once you understand how fragile balance is, you can't unsee it. You move differently. You speak carefully. You accept that not everyone will understand your choices. Bruce accepted that. He knew that legacy isn't built on what you reveal, but on what you protect. And while the world celebrated his visible strength, few recognized the invisible discipline shaping every decision he made. That discipline would become the foundation of his final lesson. A lesson not about fighting, fame, or fear, but about the responsibility that comes with knowing who you are and choosing restraint over reaction. People often ask the wrong question. They ask what Bruce Lee knew. They ask how he trained. They ask which methods made him different. But Bruce believed the most important question was why. Why share knowledge at all? Why teach? Why reveal anything that could alter the way a person sees themselves or the world? Bruce Lee didn't fear knowledge. He feared misalignment. He believed that information, without the right mindset, creates distortion. And distortion, left unchecked, becomes harm. Not always outward, often inward. A quiet destruction of balance, humility, and self-awareness. That is why he kept certain truths hidden. Bruce understood that wisdom does not scale the way techniques do. You can teach form to a room full of people. You can explain movement, speed, and structure, but you cannot mass-produce emotional maturity. Some people hear ideas. Others absorb them. Very few are transformed by them. Bruce saw this difference clearly. He noticed how some students chased mastery, while others chased validation. How some asked questions to grow, while others asked questions to feel superior. And he knew that the same lesson could elevate one person and destabilize another. So he chose discernment over openness. Bruce believed that teaching without responsibility was a form of negligence. If you give someone insight without preparing them to handle its consequences, you're not empowering them. You're abandoning them. That belief shaped everything he did. He avoided absolutes. He rejected rigid systems. He refused to package his philosophy into something easily consumed. Not because he wanted to be mysterious, but because he wanted people to think. Bruce once said that truth must be experienced, not memorized. And experience requires time, struggle, and humility. Shortcuts, he believed, rob people of the very growth they were seeking. This is where many misunderstood him. They assumed Bruce was holding back, that he was keeping secrets to preserve status, that he wanted control over his legacy. But the truth was the opposite. Bruce didn't trust systems that promised instant mastery. He didn't believe wisdom could be transferred without context. And he didn't believe everyone was ready to confront what real self-awareness demands. Because self-awareness is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront ego, to question identity, to accept responsibility for your actions without excuses. Not everyone wants that. Bruce knew that if he revealed everything, many would misuse it, not out of malice, but immaturity. And once misused, the damage couldn't be undone. So he filtered. He watched how people reacted under pressure, how they handled criticism, how they treated others when no one was watching. Only then would he decide how much to share. This approach cost him popularity. Some accused him of being difficult. Others thought he was vague on purpose. Studios wanted clarity. Audiences wanted certainty. Bruce offered neither. He offered questions, because questions force growth. Bruce believed that real teaching doesn't give answers. It builds the capacity to find them. And that capacity can't be rushed. That's why the 3 secrets were never written, never outlined, never summarized. They weren't steps. They weren't rules. They were internal realizations that had to be earned. And earning them required patience, something fame rarely encourages. Bruce accepted that his philosophy would be misunderstood, that some would imitate his movements without understanding his restraint, that some would quote him without embodying his discipline. That was the price of integrity. He believed that legacy isn't about being followed. It's about being understood, even if only by a few. And those few, Bruce believed, would carry the message forward in the right way, quietly, responsibly, and without ego. As Bruce Lee approached the later phase of his life, this belief became stronger, not weaker. He leaned further into simplicity, into mindfulness, into the idea that the highest form of power is knowing when to step back. Because the ultimate mastery isn't domination, it's self-regulation. And that understanding sets the stage for Bruce Lee's final lesson, the one that doesn't reveal the secrets themselves, but reveals something far more important. What kind of person is truly ready to hold them? Bruce Lee never believed his most important lesson would be spoken out loud. He understood something that time eventually teaches everyone. Words fade, but awareness stays. Techniques are copied. Movements are imitated. Quotes are repeated endlessly. But inner understanding, real understanding, can't be borrowed. It has to be built. That is why Bruce Lee's final message was never about the 3 secrets themselves. It was about the kind of person who would go looking for them. Because the truth is this: secrets don't make people powerful. People reveal who they are when given power. Bruce believed that most of the damage in the world isn't caused by lack of knowledge. It's caused by misused knowledge. By people acting before they understand themselves. By ego disguised as confidence. That's why his warning mattered. He wanted people to ask themselves a harder question than what are the secrets. He wanted them to ask, am I ready? Ready to act without recognition. Ready to restrain instead of react. Ready to accept responsibility without applause. Very few are. Bruce Lee's legacy is often framed around speed, strength, and precision. But those who truly studied him noticed something deeper: his patience, his discipline, his refusal to let emotion dictate action. He believed the highest form of mastery was self-governance, not control over others, control over impulse, control over ego. And that belief is what ties everything together: the warning, the silence, the restraint. Steve McQueen understood this better than most. He never spoke publicly about the details. He never tried to profit from the moment. He carried the lesson privately, not as a story to tell, but as a responsibility to live with. That alone speaks volumes. Bruce Lee didn't want followers. He wanted thinkers. He didn't want imitators. He wanted individuals who could question themselves honestly. Because once you remove illusion, what remains is character. And character, Bruce believed, is revealed not in moments of success, but in moments of temptation. When you could act but choose not to. When you could speak but remain silent. When you could dominate but decide to protect. That was Bruce Lee's final fight. Not against a person, not against circumstance, but against the misuse of power itself. And in that fight, restraint was the victory. So when people ask why Bruce Lee never shared everything, why he left parts of his philosophy unfinished, why the 3 secrets remain undefined, the answer is simple. He trusted you to do the work. He trusted you to look inward before looking outward, to master yourself before trying to master anything else. Because the most dangerous thing isn't what Bruce Lee knew. It's what happens when knowledge meets the wrong mindset. And the most powerful lesson he ever left us wasn't hidden in secrecy. It was hidden in plain sight. Not everyone is meant to know everything, but everyone is capable of becoming ready. And that choice has always been yours.